Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be looking at the Kalam Cosmological Argument for the existence of God. I also have a video series on the cosmological argument as presented by St. Thomas Aquinas. I advise you check that out as well, if this is something you're interested in. Now, a quick caveat before we get going. This is a basic introduction to the cosmological argument. If you want something more in-depth, check out Theism, Atheism, and Big Bang Cosmology by William Lane Craig and Quentin Smith, or the Cosmological Argument on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. With that out of the way, let's get started. Now, as I said in the last series, there's two arguments that we're going to be dealing with here in this series of videos called the Cosmological Argument. The first is the Thomistic Argument we checked out in the last series, presented by St. Thomas Aquinas, and the Kalam Argument that we're going to be looking at here. The Thomistic argument deals with the impossibility of an essentially ordered infinite regress, whereas the Kalam argument claims that temporal regress is impossible because an actual infinite is impossible. I know that sounds a little confusing right now, so let's take a look at the specific argument and see if we can flesh out what they really mean. So, premise 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. Premise 3, therefore the universe has a cause of its existence. And premise 4, conclusion, depending on the formulation you're looking at, since no scientific explanation in terms of physical laws can provide a causal account of the origin of the universe, the cause must be personal. Explanation given in terms of a personal agent, also known as God. This is how the argument is presented by William Lane Craig and how it's presented on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. To understand exactly what this argument is and how it works, we're going to take an individual look at each of the premises. And then, in future videos, I will offer some objections to each of the premises, and we'll see if the argument can stand up. Let's take a look. So, the first premise. Everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Basically, if there wasn't a cause, there'd be no reason for that thing to exist, or that thing to begin to exist, at least. Every effect needs some kind of cause, and they're connected through a weird thing called causality. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. Basically, this is saying that there was both a beginning and an ending to the universe. The reason I say both a beginning and an ending is based on the argument that Craig gives to support this premise, which goes, an actual infinite cannot exist. A beginningless temporal series of events is an actual infinite. Therefore, a beginningless temporal series of events cannot exist. It's not hard to replace beginningless with endingless series of temporal events to get the proof that the universe must cease to exist at a certain point. Next up, premise 3. Therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. This is just deductive logic from the first two premises. If you're a little confused by that, let's take a look. All things that are x are y. U is a thing that is x. Therefore, u is a thing that is y. Is basically the structure of the argument. Premise 1, everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause of its existence. If that was confusing, or you still want some more help with the deductive logic, let's take a look at a Venn diagram. Things that begin to exist are on one side, things that have a cause are on the other side. By the first premise, everything that begins to exist has a cause of its existence. That makes our far left side of the Venn diagram empty. The universe began to exist, which means we have to put the universe somewhere in things that begin to exist, because we can't put it in the far left side because our first premise is told that it's empty. We have to put it in the center, leading to our conclusion, the universe has a cause of its existence, because it's both in the center of things that begin to exist and things that have a cause. Finally, premise 4, or conclusion, depending on your formulation. Since no scientific explanation in terms of physical laws can provide a causal account of the origin of the universe, the cause must be personal. Explanation is given in terms of a personal agent. There's a lot of information packed into this premise, so I'm going to break it down into some more premises and a separate conclusion. So, what we're saying in here is all things that have a cause have an explanation. Because we go frequently back from cause to explanation, we need this premise in there. All explanations are either scientific or personal. If there was a different kind of explanation, we couldn't conclude that just because there's no scientific explanation, there must be a personal explanation. There is no scientific explanation of the universe. That's the beginning of the premise. and therefore there must be a personal explanation of the universe. We're also taking for this that the universe has a cause of its existence, which was the conclusion from the first three premises of the original argument. With that, if it has a cause, it has to have an explanation by 8, and because the explanation is not scientific, by 10 and 9, it must be personal. So there must be a personal explanation of the universe, aka God must exist. I'll leave you with a quote from the most influential book ever written. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Stay tuned for a video on each of those premises and objections raised towards them. Watch this video and more at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.